It was Memorial Day weekend, but if you follow lib accounts, you'd think the weekend was actually dedicated to St. George Floyd. Let's get into it on this Liberal Tuesday. The show starts in just a minute, but first, a word from our fabulous sponsor. All right, the red light face mask from Bon Charge is your go-to solution for radiant, youthful-looking skin. It's designed to help reduce the appearance of fine lines and wrinkles, promote a more even skin tone. It's the perfect way to boost your confidence with a radiant, glowing complexion. Just 10 minutes a day. I actually use mine every single night for 10 minutes right before I go to bed. I promise you, it is my favorite end of the day routine. It's cordless, it's effortless, it fits seamlessly into your routine, letting you enjoy your session while going about your day or laying in bed like I do. So make sure you go to boncharge.com and use coupon code TOMI, T-O-M-I, to get 15% off. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment on our YouTube page as well at Tomi Lahren is Fearless. The show starts now. Yesterday was, in fact, Memorial Day, a day to honor the service and the sacrifice made by the men and women of the United States military who selflessly laid down their lives and gave their last breath so that we may live freely in the greatest nation on the face of the earth. But if you happen to be a liberal, you may have instead dedicated your weekend to honoring your own brand of hero, St. George Floyd. Leave it to the racist WNBA to take that baton and sprint with it.
Thank you guys for taking a minute to honor the life of George Floyd. George was a father, a brother, and a son. And his life, like every life, held meaning. His death exposed the holes that are still in our justice and criminal institutions today. And his 5-year anniversary reminds us that we must continue the fight against criminal, racial, and social injustices. We cannot stay silent. Every life deserves respect and dignity. Thank you.
If I rolled my eyes any harder, they'd fall out of my head. But the anniversary of George Floyd's death does happen to land on Memorial Day weekend, lucky us. Therefore, our weekend timelines were flooded with tributes to a drug-addicted career felon who once held a gun to a pregnant woman's belly. What a hero, right? We were also reminded that long before the left idolized Kilmar Abrego Garcia, they worshipped, and still do, George Floyd. We're also reminded of what an absolutely stupid year 2020 was for many reasons. I don't know what's more nauseating, the flashbacks of liberals and politicians kissing George Floyd's casket, or the scenes of solo drivers double masked for COVID. What a stupid time to be alive. Look, the left has been idolizing violent thugs for generations, but it definitely hit a fever pitch in 2020, and now they've gone so far off that stupid cliff, they've added illegal alien violent criminals to their roster. So if you spent the holiday weekend honoring George Floyd rather than the ultimate sacrifice paid by the men and women of the United States military, it's safe to say we are not the same. Worse, if you look at Memorial Day as the unofficial kickoff to Pride Month, we are definitely on different planets. Joining me now on this Liberal Tuesday is Democratic strategist, our friend Raj Goyle. All right, Raj, how did you spend your weekend? Honoring George Floyd or honoring the men and women who laid down their lives for our freedom?
I mean, it's great to see you, and I've got to say, I got to get that mask because that sounds pretty good. I've got to get my beautification regimen up and going.
Raj, let me say this about the mask. Yeah. The only mask I will wear is a red light face mask, not the face diaper of 2020, the red light mask, because unlike the face diapers of 2020, the red light mask actually works. But please do continue.
Well, I'm the son of two doctors, and I think masks have probably saved a lot of human misery over the years. Spreading a disease, generally not a good thing. As for the weekend, we were in Chicago with my wife and my 2 daughters, and we're visiting family. And of course, we honored our military heroes as we do as a former elected official, and Deep Red America as a proud New York for the last 15 years. Of course, we honor those. And I think we also can honor the memory of George Floyd, who was tragically killed by the police there. And even at the time, Republican governors, Republican elected officials, they all decried the fact that that was an obvious miscarriage of justice. But that doesn't mean that we're not pitting these things against each other. Of course, we honor our military heroes. I was the ranking member on the Veterans Committee, even though I didn't serve in Kansas. And I really, really am proud of the work we did in a bipartisan way to honor our veterans and make sure that we treat our veterans as properly as they should here in America.
Well, I love that. And you can certainly honor both things. I think for me, the hero worship of George Floyd is just, it's maybe a little weird. You can also talk about justice and how you feel justice was not served for George Floyd, and also not raise him up like some kind of an idol. He doesn't have the best past. I don't know if he's necessarily the individual that any of us want to hold up as an aspirational figure. But I do want to move on because that was so 5 years ago. We need to move on to some important stuff. Okay, let's talk about this. Trump v. Harvard. All right, this is a battle that's going to go all the way up. Just like everything Donald Trump does, we're probably going to have a Supreme Court battle about it. But President Trump and his administration, they're really tightening the screws on Harvard. They simply want them to hand over the records of the international students that maybe are causing anti-Semitic hate on the college campus. And they want them to do something to actually, in a meaningful way, combat the anti-Semitism on campus. And President Trump over the weekend floated the idea of possibly taking some of the grant funding from Harvard to the tune of about $3 billion and maybe reallocating it, or sorry, $3 million, I confused that there, and reallocating that to the trade schools. What do you think about that?
Well, I think a few things. First is I was amused that Donald Trump actually cares about giving things to the poor and to the working class, because if you look at his budget bill, it's of course nothing but giveaways to the rich and slashing Medicaid. You know as well as I do, half of all births in America occur on Medicaid. Nothing makes my blood boil more as a son of two doctors who are mom and pop docs with a clinic in the heartland of America in Wichita, given incredible care for decade after decade. You go to a Medicaid clinic and then have the chutzpah to sit there and say that people are getting fat and rich and high off the hog. That's not what happens there. As far as Harvard goes, listen, anti-Semitism is obviously a huge issue, but we know what's really going after here. What's really Trump is doing here is he's trying to do what you try to do as well, which is try to own the libs. And so this has nothing to do with federal privacy in the sense that you wouldn't want your student record just divulged because somebody who's of a different political persuasion wants to look at it. Of course, Harvard, and look, I have to say, as a Harvard Law graduate, there's a lot of people saying, man, I'm now in the position I didn't really want to be in, which is I got to defend Harvard here. But look, principle is principle. And what the Trump administration is doing is outrageous, because let's just say this. I don't know if you've had anyone in your family affected by cancer. I sadly have. I suspect you have. It's a horrible scourge. And I don't know why we would shut down cancer research at one of the world's most preeminent research institutions to solve diseases. If you want to have a political fight with the liberal professors at the Harvard Law School, I am game for that all day long. If you're in the arena, you can be in the arena. But pulling all federal funding, pulling all these international graduate students. I was just in India at a family wedding last month, Tomi, and I got to say, people need to be a little bit careful here, because what will happen is America, the reason I'm an American is that my mom and dad desperately wanted to come to the greatest country on earth because they thought it was a welcoming place and they could build a life. And America did very well by my parents, and they did well by America. And now what you have is a lot of people saying, I don't know if America's for me. I don't know how they'll treat me. I don't know if I'll be thrown in detention just even though I've done nothing wrong because they don't politically like me. So that is the concern here, less about, we're agreed. Harvard, they should crack down on anti-Semitism. No Jewish student should feel unsafe. No student should be unsafe. But why would we cut off our nose despite our face just to make a political point?
So I want to ask you, the only way that this administration can coerce Harvard to do something about their anti-Semitism is by cutting off funding. What else are they going to do? They've made it very clear to all of these universities, you need to cut out the anti-Semitism. You need to do something meaningful to end this, because it's not going to continue on his watch, right? He's going to look out for these Jewish students. He's not going to have anti-American, anti-Jewish hate on these college campuses. So if you don't take away the funding carrot, how else does this administration make sure that these Jewish students on campus are protected?
It's a very legitimate thing for an executive branch that has won a fair and square election to say, hey, listen, we're going to look at your funding mix. all day long. If the United States Congress wants to tax endowments, Harvard is sitting there on tens of billions of dollars, hoarding all of that money. I would agree that these are fair issues to debate. What isn't happening, but that is a very different thing, Tomi, than saying we're not going to process we're not going to process an international student. I mean, Kristi Noem, I don't know, what is going on in that department, but like that is an absolute mockery, and it's completely counterproductive. Let's forget the morality of it. Let's forget the cruelty of it. It is both immoral and cruel. Let's just you and I talk about the practicality of it, because I know you like solutions. On what planet is it helping America by saying these thousands of students who clearly have done nothing wrong? If they had done anything wrong, they wouldn't have been allowed in the first place. They've been vetted. They have background checks. They come to build a better life and add value to America and the world by doing scientific research, solving disease. Again, if you want to have a political fight with some liberal professor all day long, that's not what's going on here.
But
and
Raj,
that's what needs to be pointed out.
It's professors that are the problem. It's some of these students. Now, I agree. The reason that they're saying, all right, no international students is because, unfortunately, Harvard can't police the ones that it has, and doesn't seem to have any motivation for the international students that are coming over to preach anti-Semitic, anti-American hate, stir up violence on campus, barricade Jewish students in buildings. Harvard doesn't seem to want to do anything about that. So I agree. There are some.
No, you're saying that is not the case. And the fact of the matter is, these universities. Look, I think it's not happening right now. It's just, tell me an incident in the last. I know this is a nice meme and a nice myth. And right after October 7th, of course, there's a lot of passion on campus. And if there was excess, that shouldn't have been allowed. But let's be very clear here that you are fighting a bogeyman here to own the libs. That's what this is about. This is about picking a fight with Harvard because Harvard as an institution leans left and dislikes Donald Trump. This is also
because they allow anti-Semitism to run rampant on their campus.
Well, I think it's very convenient in terms of when they cutting off cutting off foreign students has nothing to do with anti-Semitism. Let's be real here. Let's dispense with the theater here. You said it yourself. This is might makes right. He is just firing bullets that he's got in his gun because he wants a stick, in your words. And so this is a stick that is one of the dumbest things you can do. We're going to have thousands of students who want to come to America. I thought the right loved America. I thought the right was pro-legal immigration that said, come to America and do amazing things as Americans. Right now, Donald Trump is destroying that. And that is so counterproductive. It's frankly going to make Jewish students less safe. And so what this administration has every right to do is to tell the university world, hey, we can look at your we can have a debate in Congress. We can do whatever we want within the legal authority, but we are not going to destroy your institution just because we don't like you. And everybody knows what the game is here, Tomi. You do, I do.
Well, I don't. I disagree with you, because if President Trump just wanted to go after liberal universities, I mean, every damn one of them would be on the table. There are a few conservative universities.
And he's going after all of them, and he's going after other liberal institutions.
Fostering anti-Semitism, barricading students, vandalizing property. I mean, I know
can you give me an example? Give me an example at Harvard where that's happened. You laid that out as the standard, Tomi. You didn't answer my question. You laid that out, that there's barricading and that there's terrorizing going on of Jewish students at Harvard. Please tell me when that happened.
You're dismissing the anti-Semitism on Harvard's
and
campus?
You're not answering the question.
You saying because that did not happen there. You're saying that did not happen
you're now changing because you can't give an example. And the reason is because it is very legitimate to tell Harvard and to tell the deans and the resident advisors and everybody that says, if people feel unsafe, legitimately feel unsafe. Again, this is kind of an interesting juxtaposition here, because now I guess the right is saying that you guys were all anti-triggering and you were against woke things. But I guess we have to have now standards that say, if you are legitimately feeling unsafe, no one should feel unsafe on a campus. You can be a Jew, you can be a Muslim, you can be a Hindu, you can be a Southern Baptist. It doesn't matter. The college should protect the people on its campus. And when I spent my 3 years, at Harvard, I didn't see any evidence of that. I had plenty of beefs with Harvard University. Trust me. Do I think that Harvard University is a fair debate, a topic to debate about how that endowment is run, about how much resources goes into Harvard? All day long. But to essentially kneecap the university, and it's going to hurt you and me, Tomi. I want cancer solved. I want the new technological breakthroughs. I want the companies that come out of Harvard because it's good for America and good for our economy. So look, I think maybe we could, agree to disagree on this one. What Donald Trump's doing at Harvard is nice red meat for his base. It is utterly stupid policy.
Well, I think for the Democrat Party, I can't imagine a Jewish American voting for Democrats anytime soon. I just can't. I couldn't rationalize that. I have a lot of friends who are Jewish.
Well,
again.
I'm never so arrogant as to put my place into someone else's. There's a lot of Democrats who say they can't imagine women who vote for Donald Trump and so on. And I said, as a guy who's knocked 15,000 doors, I don't ever take on that. I don't ever use that line of argument because people vote as they wish to vote. My job as an advocate, as a former elected official, as somebody who, may be back into politics, I would say, listen, our job is to put arguments out there, to persuade, to tell a story of the way we see the world and the way we want to move the world. And then the chips fall where they may. And I'll say, Tommy, the reason he's going after Harvard like this is to distract from the fact that the Trump economy is in shambles. If you remember Donald Trump, so let's get out there. How's your 401k doing? Up or down since Trump was elected? How are the prices of eggs on your block?
Actually,
up or down? How are gas prices?
Up or down? They both have gone down.
But they're a net increase since Trump took office. There's more war and less peace. He told us over and over and over that he would solve Russia-Ukraine before he was sworn in. He has lost complete control of the situation. He's now today making empty threats against Vladimir Putin, calling him crazy. There's going to be hell to pay. Vladimir Putin is having the last laugh.
I thought you guys wanted him to talk tough against Putin.
You're the one who said he was going to solve the war. Everybody said on the right, look at Trump. He's a strong man. He's not a weak, feckless Democrat. He's a strong man. Now look at Israel. He doesn't even meet with Netanyahu, whatever our views on Netanyahu, but that situation is completely out of control. Very few hostages have come home. Hamas still has hostages. And Russia-Ukraine has spiraled completely out of control. We now have record attacks in Kiev, and Vladimir Putin is laughing at the president of the United States. So whatever the left, the right said about their relationship, I don't care. I'm talking about results right now. The Trump economy and the Trump foreign policy are both in shambles. So he wants to pick fights with Harvard because the media goes along with it. And so I think the reason why Donald Trump was elected very legitimately and fair and square was that a bunch of people in the middle, the so-called swing voters, said, I'm not really buying what the Democrats are selling. And I trust Trump enough to work hard on these issues, and I'm going to give him a shot. Now, his base, like you're with Trump, thick or thin. But these people in the middle, they don't like what they're seeing. And that's why I think the midterms will go well for the Democrats. We can talk about the future of the Democratic Party because we have a lot of work to do internally. And you and I have talked a lot about that in my past appearances. But the fact of the matter is Donald Trump isn't performing on the metrics he said he would perform on, which is prices of goods, the stock market, and war and peace.
The stock market is up today, but neither here nor there.
No, you can't look at it today. It is net down from when he was sworn in, and it was almost in bear territory. I work a lot in business. That the stock market was cratering, and now in the last 30 days we've had an upswing. It is still a net bear economy in the market. The S&P 500 and my 401k is down. Those and egg prices are up and gas prices are up. These are the metrics on how people.
Prices are not up.
They are net up since Trump took office.
No, they're not.
And so inflation has not been tamed. He said that he would solve inflation.
Is cooling, but whatever.
It is cooling. You sound like a Joe Biden White House.
No,
I guess there's no principle.
Raj,
Inflation was going down in 2024, and you said no,
Raj,
Democrats, you're lying.
Raj,
you can't have it both ways.
I am happy to admit that there's work to be done in the economy. I think President Trump is transforming this economy, and I think that the tariff situation is going to take a little time to play out. We've already got encouraging news that the EU is finally ready to come to the table and make a meaningful deal. And so I'm going to let that play out. And you know what? If it doesn't work and this whole tariff experiment doesn't work, I'll be happy to say it didn't work. I'm confident in it. And eggs and gas are not up. So
let me ask you a quick question. The tariff policy, which God knows what the heck it is because it changes by the hour. Nobody knows. He doesn't know.
Right?
And so Well, no, it was so-called Liberation Day, whatever the hell that means. And so now what we have is every time the market rallies, it's when he pulls off of a tariff.
Exactly.
So now you've got this.
Of course they are.
Well,
I understand that, but I don't look at what the market does each and every day. They're going to respond to the day-to-day.
I agree with that.
Obviously. I'm telling
Of course you
this.
can't look at the day-to-day.
The tariff situation was never meant to be a blockbuster on day one. It was always meant to be a complete reshuffling, and it is going to take time to do that. It doesn't happen overnight. I believe in the process. I believe in what President Trump is trying to do. You can disagree with that, but we both know that it's not going to happen overnight. This is not a short game. This is a long game.
I would agree with that. I just don't understand a tariff policy that is building more factories in India. So now you have Apple and you have the iPhone saying we're going to pull out of China. Good deal. I support that. And now we're just going to have it made in India. Now, I don't understand why I should care that there are more. No, in fact, right now, I mean, the Wall Street Journal just had that huge article about how expensive it is to make an iPhone in the U.S. Now, I support that. We should have more reshoring. We should have a huge emphasis on the domestic manufacturing base. Those are one of the reasons why Donald Trump grabbed Democratic votes. And I will admit that all day long. But these tariffs so far is everything I can tell over the last 150 days or so since he's been in office. I can't make head or tails in terms of what the actual policy is that's going to make America richer. I do understand chaos theory. I understand the concept that says I'm going to be all over the place and I'm going to keep you guessing and therefore you're going to cut a deal with me. But if you look at the quote deals cut, even that EU deal, most analysts are saying, gosh, this is really nothing new or interesting. So I agree with you. I think we could agree. Let's wait and see what happens. But in the meantime, my 401k is getting crushed. People want to retire soon. Their 401k, you know how many people have said, I've got to work now 2 to 3 years longer because of this stock market performance. You would say, give it time. I for the sake of those people, I hope you're right. But right now, this performance is not what we were promised.
Okay. Well, that's your opinion of it. It's not mine, but it's yours and you're welcome to it. Let's talk about the Democrat Party. I hear that they're spending a real big chunk of change trying to win back American men. In fact, they have a code name for it, Sam, speaking to American men. So apparently, according to the New York Times reporting, prominent party leaders are holing up in luxury hotel rooms trying to figure out how to win back young men. And they want to learn how to talk to them, and they want to learn the language of the spaces. I would say that if you have to strategize and you have to give a code name to talking to young men, you might be too far gone to win back those young men. But do you think Sam is a winning strategy?
Well, I love how the right invokes the New York Times when it's convenient, and I also think it's hysterical. I'm just talking about the reporting there, because they reported on. Well, sure, I know it seems like a convenient principle there. On this one, look, we don't need $20 million. I will say Donald Trump has $500 million in a political action committee ready to go for the midterm. So in the grand scheme of American politics, sadly, where billions are thrown around every election cycle by both sides, this is a drop in the bucket. But of course, we don't need a project, and who knows what the actual facts are. Something tells me it's not about studying it so much as, hey, let's work on this fact and let's get to the real issue, which is there is a problem with the Democratic Party reaching young men. And so I don't think it's that hard to solve, to be honest, which is you just be normal people. And, I guess, I don't know. Does that mean, I'm in New York right now and the talk of the town is the Knicks. I guess I don't need some study to tell me that I'm really excited to see the Knicks do well. But here's the issue, which is fundamentally what the Democratic Party has promised voters, in my view, hasn't lived up to the expectations of what we said. This is consistent with my critique of what Donald Trump has done since he's sworn in. The reason why I think the Republicans are going to have a comeuppance in 2026 is voters, and having been an elected official, don't like it when they trust you to do something and then it doesn't happen. So Democrats have said over and over that we are going to help on a set of issues, and they didn't see progress on those issues. So then what happens is Donald Trump is a masterful political figure. And you've got the Musk media, you've got the Murdoch media, and so Democrats
the right just owns the media. You guys don't have any media outlets. Not like you control Hollywood, academia, the rest of the mainstream media, publications.
Listen, I'm not going to sit here. I'm not going to BS you. Of course, a lot of those institutions lean left, no doubt. But you also, Tomi, cannot deny now the fusing of the Murdoch media, which is very powerful with Musk's control, has given a huge megaphone to the right. And look, those That's a much deeper discussion. My point is this: Democrats, we need to acknowledge that we're at a 40-year nadir in terms of our brand and in terms of what people believe about the Democratic Party. The reason I'm hopeful and the reason why I'm happy to be on your show and talk about this is that it's always darkest before the light. I remember the 2000 election in which I went to bed and I was like, oh my God, they've got all three branches of government. 8 years later, we put up 365 electoral votes. So politics moves quickly in America. We are in a realignment. And ultimately, these processes of finding yourself as a party, they are ultimately healthy. They're painful as hell, but they are healthy because if you have something to say, you better figure out how to say it. And the last thing, Tomi, I think you would agree with this. Donald Trump, in my view, even doesn't get enough credit for the fact that in 2016, he beat, 17 other Republican candidates. He dethroned the ruling establishment of the Republican Party. He went out there and said, I'm going to inherit the Republican coalition and I'm going to add Trump voters to it. That's the Trump coalition. So now the challenge for Democrats is our coalition has shrunk. The New York Times did some really cool reporting yesterday or Sunday in which they actually had all the counties that have moved Republican over 3 cycles versus that have moved Democratic. It's a big ominous warning sign. And also after redistricting in 2031, the country is going to become more. We have people moving into red states. So when the Electoral College is reapportioned, that's going to be hard for Democrats. And so what Democrats have to do is define who we are and say, fundamentally, we need a bigger coalition. And we're not going to be able to just sit here and condemn and condescend toward people who we don't like and so on. That is not a winning formula. And I'll be the first Democrat to stand up and say we need Democrats who actually attain power, use power, do what we say we'll do, and show the voters, this is a Democratic Party I can trust.
Yeah. Best of luck with that. I would also add, I understand that some people are not happy yet with the way that the economy is. They wanted it to be like this and everything's fixed. We know it doesn't work that way. But I would add that everything that President Trump campaigned on, he is doing. No tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, extend the Trump tax cuts, tariffs. He campaigned on tariffs. You might not like them, but he campaigned on them.
That's fair.
Cutting anti-Semitism, combating anti-Semitism, mass deportations of illegal aliens, everything that he said he was going to do, he is in the process of doing. So there's no oh my God, we elected him and he's doing something totally different.
I'll acknowledge that. I will say I don't remember him campaigning on taking a $500 million jet from the Qataris, and so I'm making that reference because I think it's important. And
thing. I get it. I
want to know many of your friends. I want to know. I would be curious because I respect your views. Where do you stand on that issue? Many of your friends on the right also said, "We've got to condemn this. How can you take a free personal jet?" From a country, it's going to go to him personally.
No, it's not.
It's going to him personally after 2028.
He's not fly around
That's his personal.
No,
he can.
He's not.
It's the library. Then you don't know how libraries work. The libraries are not that he can do what he wants with that library. I know how presidential libraries work, and so I'm curious, Tomi. What is your view? Because Laura Loomer, many others said, "Hey, listen." This jet is just a bridge too far. These Qataris, are you kidding me? They literally host Hamas. So here you are talking about anti-Semitism all day long. You throw it around like a weapon and a cudgel, and then he's taken a $500 million. Let's just call it what it is. It's an influence peddling gift. That's exactly. I mean, we don't generally go around as America taking planes from other countries unless there's strings attached. So, what's your view on it?
I don't know what the strings would be. Listen, it's not something that keeps me awake at night.
The strings, of course, Qatar has so much they could do if they had influence over the president of the United States. It's a massive oil state in the Middle East. I mean, let's be serious about that. Of course, they have an agenda.
I don't feel like it is a bribe. However, I will say I don't love it. I would have just not done it because I don't like to open up the discussion for it. I would have said no thanks. President Trump sees it as a way to save money, and hey, if you're going to give us a plane, give us a plane. But it's not something I'm going to die on. I'm not going to die on that hill. Whatever. I wouldn't take the plane if I was the president, but at the end of the day, I'm not going to sit here and cry tears over it. I get it. That's a good one for you.
I don't know what that means, but it sounds like you and I are in the same place, which is you wouldn't have done this, and I think that's a big statement. I mean, I think the president is probably in his kitchen cabinet there, feeling very empowered after the election, and I just think he needs to be careful. And I'm not that he takes advice from me, but what I'm saying is, I think that these crypto dinners, the jet from Qatar, all of these things. What his children are doing with the Trump organization, what the Witkoff organization is doing.
All right.
Well, I think it's important to point out people
back to this again.
No,
you know that the Trump family has
Trump's
lost far
brand
more in political office than he's gained.
I would have agreed with that through the first term, not anymore. And so, Tommy, you got to look at these stories and these facts, because what I would say is this: Trump ran to clean up the swamp. And so that's what I'm getting at, which is there is a growing disconnect. You may not agree and you may not like this, but there's a growing disconnect saying, wait, he said that prices would go down. They're up. He's talked about tariffs. I didn't know it would hammer my 401k. He said he'd clean up the swamp, but we got a $500 million plane from these guys who host Hamas. What is going on here? This isn't what I voted for. So that's going to be the battle of 2026.
Well, you know what? If you think if that's your strategy and you think the Democrats can just go all the way on that, best of luck to you on it. I see it completely differently, but I guess we'll have to wait and see how this thing shakes out. I like my team. I think I'm going to stick with it. Last question for you.
I respect that.
Last question for you, though, is do you think that your party can weather the big lie and the big cover-up of Joe Biden's physical and mental decline? Do you think anybody that was around that situation or covered for that situation has a future in politics?
Well, I think you and I both know on both sides that the political industry doesn't do accountability very well. So, look, I think for Democrats, to answer your question, absolutely yes, in terms of the fact that everybody's ready to turn the page here. I think I am with many, many Democrats very aghast about what happened. We knew it, that was a contemporary concern and so on. I'm not obviously I'm not at the White House. I'm not involved in any of those discussions. And so I do think that now moving forward, what's going to happen is there's going to be I think this whole media firestorm over Biden's state last year has only put more fuel on the fire within the Democratic Party for reform. So this is a new generation. There's new things, new blood and new organizations forming every day. And what I like about it is the fact that in 2017, it was all resistance toward Trump. Now, that resulted in a very good outcome in 2018, and then, of course, a presidential win in 2020. But it didn't fundamentally change the coalitions that we talked about. We were still on a general trend downward that is now culminating in where we are now. What I see happening now, and that is the result of, again, this media firestorm, is to say, listen, we clearly need to turn the page. We need a new generation, not only of electeds, but of advisors, of strategists, of consultants, and so on in politics to say we need to connect with the American people, deliver for the American people, and not play this beltway game, which I think, frankly, we had just gotten a little bit too inside our own heads, to be honest.
Well, those new people, they better have been born yesterday, because the rest of you guys saw the Biden decline, and very few people were willing to speak up about it. Curious, and I got to go, so I can only take a couple minutes for this, but did you see the cognitive and physical decline of Joe Biden before the June 27th debate?
Sure. I mean, I don't think anybody could sit there and say otherwise. And so, obviously, I'm just a guy in New York here, and obviously I've worked in politics.
Well, you're a Democratic strategist. You didn't think to maybe ring
whatever that. Look, I would say this, which and I'll say it again, which is the silver lining out of this, the lemonade that we're going to make out of this, is that now we realize how much, and it's not just about Joe Biden's his state. It's also about the fact there have now been several examples, Tommy, where Democrats have chosen to close ranks rather than have an open, transparent, competitive process. Mm-hmm. I will remind you that in 2008, Howard Dean, who gets nary enough credit, ran a very clean, very fair process at the DNC. He didn't put a thumb on the scale for Hillary Clinton, who was the front runner, or Obama, or anybody. And Barack Obama was an awesome candidate. You may not like Barack Obama, but you cannot deny he put up 360. Donald Trump would foam at the mouth to have 365 electoral votes. Barack Obama's majority of 2008 was the most sweeping win in the last 30 years in American politics. And he did it because he got better during the process. He beat not only Hillary Clinton, he beat Joe Biden, he beat Chris Dodd, he beat John Edwards, he beat Bill Richardson. So these were really good candidates, and he got better. So instead of that process in 2016, we had a flawed DNC process that tried to put a thumb on the scale for Hillary Clinton. In 2024, we had a process again where we closed ranks and didn't have an open primary. And even after the debate, there was enough time to do that. I was a strong proponent of that. And in 2020, one more example, we had that open primary process and it worked. And Joe Biden emerged as a stronger candidate and was strong enough to go on and win the general. So the muscle that we've got to build in the Democratic Party is to say that healthy competition and to have an open market that works will yield better results for the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
And that is something that we've got to build fresh.
I'm glad that you said healthy competition, because that's loaded. Maybe somebody who's not on death's door. That would be, I would like that for you guys. Best of luck. Maybe don't also as a party lie to the American people that he is the strongest, most agile, flexible, young kitty cat out there. Maybe don't lie. Like, that was an ongoing process.
Why don't you and I agree? Lying is bad and shouldn't be done by anybody. So
there we go.
I appreciate you having me, Tomi, as always. I hope you're doing well.
Thanks, Raj. I appreciate it. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, soon. Talk to you. Bye.
All right, guys. If you're familiar with LA's infamous Skid Row, you know it's basically a homeless free-for-all. But if you're a defenseless dog, it's even worse. And it's time for final thoughts. So if you know me, you know animal rescue tops the list of things that I care about. So when it was brought to my attention by various LA area animal rescues that dogs are actively being abused and mistreated on Skid Row, well, you damn well know I have to use my platform to call it out. So the footage that you're looking at was taken days ago in LA's infamous Skid Row area. But I've been told by various animal rescues this is nothing new. Dogs are locked up in wire crates covered with tarps in the summer heat with no food and water, locked up in the dark in their own waste. It makes me sick, and even more so, it makes me furious. Now, the police have been called, LA Animal Control has been called, but nothing has been done. Various rescues have attempted to get the dogs out, and every once in a while they have success. But this is an almost never-ending cycle. They pull dogs out of these homeless encampments, but due to no spaying or neutering, more puppies are born. The cycle continues. Where in the hell is Mayor Karen Bass? In Ghana? Doesn't care? Who knows? But I'm not about to sit back and let this go unreported at a national level. And to those who say we shouldn't care more about the dogs than the homeless people themselves, I'd say to you, these dogs are completely innocent. They did nothing to land themselves in this situation to be abused, neglected, and tortured like this. I don't know why LA Animal Control is not acting, but I've been told the enforcement at these homeless encampments is very, very light, and nothing shocks me less. These encampments in LA are a free-for-all. The homeless do whatever the hell they want, and they get away with damn near anything, including animal abuse. Governor Newsom said he's going to crack down on these filthy hellhole encampments, but there is no enforcement mechanism behind his bravado and his empty words. Shocker. He wants to act like he's doing something without lifting a finger or doing a damn thing. You know, it's sickening one of the nation's largest and most beautiful cities, LA, has been allowed to devolve into a friggin' third world country. The homeless have taken over. They run that town. Decent, law-abiding residents and defenseless animals have been made to tolerate the lawless filth. Stop enabling this lifestyle. And I know shelters in LA and across the country are full. I know the resources are already incredibly tight, but there are dozens of rescues that will gladly take the dogs out of the situation. You can help by sharing this video and following Starts With One Today on Instagram. You can also help by making the decision to adopt a pet instead of buy one from a breeder or a pet store. These animals are God's creatures. They did nothing to land themselves in this situation. They have no voice. But if we all amplify this, we can be their voice and their advocates. Please help. Those are my final thoughts. Please be sure to tune in live tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern. Catch full episodes of the show on Outkick and Fox Nation at your leisure. Please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Tomi Lahren is Fearless. From Nashville, God bless and take care. Hey, thanks for watching. If you want more of my hottest takes, must-see conversations, and of course, my final thoughts, click here and make sure you subscribe here so you never miss a beat. I'll be here every weekday, and I hope you'll join me.